Welcome to the Man Cave Podcast with Dan Casper.
He is Dr. Austin Crowe, Chippewa Valley Orthopedics and Sports Medicine, joining us here this morning. So, Austin, we'll get your Super Bowl pick coming up towards the end. But how you doing this morning, bud?
I'm doing fantastic.
Hey, are you ready for it? You guys do you do anything usual for the big game, or does it kind of depend on who's playing in it?
It depends on who's playing. I mean, we'll often throw a little shindig at the place, but we're actually heading out of town, heading to a steamboat on a ski trip. So
nice.
I will be out of town for this one. So
nice. Yeah. All right. Well, getting out before the storm comes?
That's the hope.
Yeah.
We will see.
Well, hey, that's where I want to lead off with the Super Bowl. Not a lot of injuries heading into this one, but maybe one player in particular will be interesting is Brandon Graham, who said he's going to retire after this game, but he's trying to play in this game. He tore his biceps, though, on November 24th, and they've listed him as limited in practice and such. Tearing your biceps, that's usually an injury I think causes a player to miss the rest of the season, and we're talking about early February. What do you think the odds are that he can play, and if he is going to play, how effective could he really be out there?
Yeah, I think it depends on the extent of the injury. Traditionally, if you have an injury to one of the major, elbow flexors or extensors, because I think I saw it was his triceps, not his biceps, but either way, it's going to be either what bends or straightens your arm. Turns out you need both of them to play football. So if it's a partial tear, he might be able to go out there and participate. If it's complete, he has going to have significant impairment in his ability to flex or extend the elbow. So it would be very challenging for him to go out there and compete at a high level. But if it is more of a partial injury, perhaps he's able to kind of fight through that. And so, I think the team is going to do what's right for them. They'll probably give him a warm-up, see what he can do. And if he's able to participate at a level they feel is going to give him a chance to win, he'll get out there and play. But I just got to say, just at the sound of it, usually if it's like a low-grade partial, then it probably won't be a big of a deal. But if it's high grade or complete, I just think it's going to be very difficult. Because you are correct. Generally, that is a season ending. You get surgery and start rehabbing.
This was actually the next questions actually came from a listener a little bit earlier, and he wanted me to ask you. He says, I know you and Dr. Crowe talk a lot about ACL injuries. Is there any studies that he knows that could help prevent injuries? Like, could it be different shoes or knee braces, or does equipment even factor in with tearing ACLs?
Equipment-wise, not a ton. We do know that there are certain things that can affect injury rates. So, for example, in football, like bracing of the knee will help MCL injuries for interior linemen. That's why most offensive linemen in college and NFL, you'll see wear knee braces because they get rolled up on a lot. And ankle braces can help with ankle sprains, things like that. When it comes to ACL tears, the only thing that's really been shown to decrease the tear rates, it's not equipment. It's actually kind of like a rehab or conditioning protocol, especially in young women. So there's these programs that have come out that it's about kind of having control of your hips and legs when you jump and land, because the majority of ACL tears are non-contact injuries. So it's often people jumping and landing awkwardly or planting, and the knee will basically fall inward. And so really you're doing exercises to help the athlete keep their legs straight and in control. And that comes partially through like the lower leg, but actually part of it comes through the hips as well. And so strengthening exercises, those have been shown to decrease ACL tear rates. So and that doesn't take it to zero, but it certainly has shown a decrease. So there's a lot of schools that will do that for the young athletes. Again, it's most effective in young women. And so that's the thing that they can do as far as jumping and strengthening programs to help decrease that. But, unfortunately, there's not a single cure-all where it's like we give you the patent of, Austin Crowe sock that prevents ACL tears. Maybe I should start marketing it. I don't know, but
there you go. It's like those copper bracelets or all that stuff there too.
Sure, yeah, Brett Favre, the regular jeans too, maybe.
That's because when they were talking about equipment, like I didn't know, like cheap shoes. I kept going back to Zion when he blew out that shoe. Remember from a couple years ago and that. So I don't know. Does cheap shoes matter or not really when it comes to ACL?
I would say probably not. It's. I guess you could have a fluke thing where like the shoe blew out and you slipped or something to that effect, but it's not often so much the foot getting caught in the ground with that type of injury. It's more of how the body shifts above it.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, I don't think that kids aren't going to be able to use it as an excuse to convince their parents to buy the new Jordans, I don't think.
I want to move to baseball here quick, just because we're getting close to spring training starting. And, for Brewers fans, they're kind of hoping to see Brandon Woodruff come back this year. And I know we talked about him a little bit when he first had that injury, and that was a refresher, an anterior capsule in his right shoulder. And, Pat Murphy the other day still tempering down expectations, saying he's probably not going to be ready in spring training, probably not going to be ready to go for the regular season. He had missed all of last year. But maybe as a refresher, since we are getting close to baseball starting, why is this injury such a hard one for pitchers to come back from?
Well, any shoulder injury is tough for throwers. So, but the issue is going to be generally when we're repairing the anterior capsule, it's due to instability. So the shoulder shifting in ways it's not supposed to. There's several different things that stabilize the shoulder. So we have the actual bony anatomy. So you have the ball and the socket. And then the socket, which is called the glenoid, there's a little rim around it called the labrum. And then attached to the labrum is the capsule and the ligaments. And so as you look at those structures, some of them are set, right? So like the bone is what it is. But we can have injuries to the labrum or the capsule that we can attempt to repair. So presumably he was having some level of instability in the shoulder that resulted in them deciding to repair that capsule and probably labrum associated with it. Well, the challenge is that you're walking this incredibly fine line where when you're tightening your shoulder up with a capsular repair, we call it capsulorrhaphy. If you make it too tight, you're going to limit range of motion. If you don't tighten it up, the shoulder will remain unstable. And so on an athlete that's throwing, especially, I know we've talked about this before, if you ever look at a slow-mo video of a thrower, it is absolutely mind-boggling what the arm actually does. How far it cocks back and the velocity that it comes through. So if you limit that motion, you will impair that pitcher from ever getting back to where they were. So, there's pretty good studies that have looked at that. So labral work and capsular work on throwers, the return to elite throwing, unfortunately, is not great. It's not bad, so it's not like you have the surgery and you're guaranteed never to come back. But I would say to get to where he was before, you're probably looking at 50-50, maybe a little higher than that. Could he get back too close to it? Maybe, and then that would probably be a little bit higher percentage. But it's tough to come back from that. And so he's going to be able to he's going to have to get all of his range of motion back. Then he's going to have to work on the muscles that keep the shoulder stable. And then he has to turn the arm back into a MLB pitcher's arm, right? So there's going to be a lot of phases to this. And that's why they're not going to rush this back. They don't want to get it back too quickly. So if he doesn't have the appropriate range of motion or the strength, he's going to put stress on that shoulder and either re-injure it or just aggravate it and get stuck in a cycle of inflammation on that shoulder that he won't be able to break out of. So it is going to be, I don't anticipate this being a quick recovery, especially in a thrower shoulder. It's going to be some time. So again, all hope is not lost. I wouldn't say that at all, but certainly it's going to be a battle for him to get back to where he was. But if he's able to get there, there are some that do get back and throw at really, really high levels. So we're certainly hoping that for him.
Yeah, no question. One of the awards for the NFL that was given away last night was Joe Burrow winning Comeback Player of the Year. And I know, at least on social media, people are like, what? Why Joe Burrow for Comeback Player of the Year? But let's rewind it to when he suffered an injury. I know you and I talked a little bit about it, and I could still remember the video where he's trying to grip a football, on the sideline and such. So maybe, again, kind of as a why was that such a major injury? Because I think people kind of forget that there was a lot of question marks, with Joe Burrow coming back this year, how well he would be able to play.
Absolutely. And I was one of them. I said it on air. That injury, so an injury to the scapholunate ligament, which is one of the main ligament stabilizers in the wrist, that is a devastating injury. Now, I don't know the extent of his injury, so maybe he had a partial tear or something, but complete disruption of the SL or scapholunate ligament, it is. There are plenty of people who aren't able to get back to regular jobs, let alone throwing a football in the NFL. So for him to get back to that level, I absolutely nothing short of spectacular. Not only that, he did it at a high level. He might have led the NFL in yards or close to it if he wasn't. It was just a fantastic year he had. So I think when you look at that injury and his ability to come back from it in one season, absolutely deserving of that award. It's one of those that there are times that these guys are able to come back from injuries, just at a level that normal people aren't, because guess what? They're not normal. There's a reason he was an NFL quarterback. because of what he's able to do with his body. So I guess we shouldn't be surprised when some of these guys come back from this, but that can be a very devastating injury.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And then to wrap it up, I know it's not a new injury or anything like that, but last night too in the Hall of Fame, Jared Allen got in. Your Viking over there too. So also Sterling Sharp getting into the Hall of Fame. But this kind of relates to, I think, one free agent for the Packers is A.J. Dillon, who suffered some stingers, like 2 stingers, and he didn't even play at all this year. And I still haven't really heard what the main issue is, but you got to wonder if it's that neck issue that maybe that Sterling Sharp also suffered that cut his career short. Mm-hmm. So was that? Can you explain again what exactly with the vertebrae and the narrowing? What caused Sterling Sharp to miss the rest of his career?
Correct. Yeah. So he had a run of stingers, right? So stingers is a term we use when an athlete has basically electric shooting pain or like radiculopathy down the arm. So I get this like burning pain. Sometimes it just hurts. Sometimes it's numb. Sometimes it's weak. And sometimes it's completely benign. So the kind of mild version is where you take a hit and it puts tension or what we call traction on the brachial plexus. So it pulls on the nerves. It hurts. Most people who play football have had it happen to them at least once or twice. And it can be scary. I mean, for a split second, you're like, I don't know if I can move my arm.
Mm-hmm.
It hurts. But the mild version, bam, it goes away. It comes back, and they're 100%. When they start getting it over and over, you start getting worried that it's not actually coming from the brachial plexus, that it's coming from the neck. So they'll often investigate with X-rays and MRI, CTs, etc. And some athletes have a combination of what's called congenital stenosis. So stenosis means narrowing. So it means that the opening either of the exiting nerve, what's called the neuroforamen, or centrally the spinal cord, that area, that central stenosis, that can be very dangerous. So pinching of the nerves and traction on the nerves hurts, but it's generally not dangerous. If you have central stenosis, they can get actual spinal cord injuries. And so when you have that narrowing, there's measurements that we have, and we can have these ratios that we look at. And if it's at a critical number, you're basically going to tell the athlete, like, you're at an increased risk of actually having a spinal cord injury without breaking their neck. So it's one thing, anyone could break their neck and get paralyzed, right? That can happen. But we're talking about an athlete being hit where the neck doesn't actually break, but it's so narrow that the bones shift a little bit, and it can actually pinch the spinal cord and cause a spinal cord injury. And to that extent, I believe Sterling Sharp, in addition to the congenital stenosis, he also had a little bit of laxity there. So we'll get what are called flexion extension X-rays. So you'll extend your neck and flex your neck as far as you can. And everyone has a little bit of natural movement. Some move more. So if you have a combination of narrowing and extra movement, you can have really significant pinching of that. So my assumption is, and again, I don't know this for a fact, but my guess is that he had an MRI that was showing he had bruising of the spinal cord itself with that narrowing, with the hypermobility. And they probably told him, look, your next hit, it could be fine, or you could get paralyzed. And I don't care who you are, you have that story. Mm-hmm. It's going to really put the fear of God in you. So that resulted in his early retirement. So there have been a number of professional football players who have had to retire early because of that. And then A.J. Dillon, he was obviously suffering from a similar issue. And again, it depends on the severity of it, depends on the severity of the symptoms. But it can be to the extreme of, again, literal spinal cord injuries. The step down from that is what we call transient quadriplegia, where an athlete takes a hit and the spinal cord gets whacked, and for lack of a better term, you get a concussion of the spinal cord, but they will for a while, and it could be seconds or minutes, where they're paralyzed. And I mean, I cannot even imagine being in that scenario. I mean, how scary that would be. So everyone says, oh my gosh, these guys are making millions of dollars and they have a Hall of Fame career. Like, why would they quit? Like, you get paralyzed or think you're going to be paralyzed, it all of a sudden puts things into perspective real quickly.
Absolutely. Wow. All right. Hey, before we let you go, who are you rolling with on Sunday?
Man, I think we said this last week. These are not my two favorite teams. Let's put it that way. I think, the Eagles, I've never liked the Eagles. They've, knocked off my Vikings a couple times. Their fan base are not my favorite.
That's a theme I'm finding out with Vikings fans right now, is that you and the Eagles. Yeah.
No, just don't get along. And I don't know anyone that really likes Eagles fans, to be honest with you. I don't even know if the Eagles fans like each other. But anyway, but I think when you look at what Mahomes has done and what the Chiefs have done, I mean, maybe it's envy, but it feels like they're going to put themselves in a category that I just don't know if they're worthy of it. And I guess, again, maybe it's envy. Maybe I wish it was my team that was doing that. Well, I definitely wish it was my team that was doing that. But for them to win and to put them there, it's like, do I really think they're one of the greatest, runs in football history? I mean, on paper it certainly is, but I don't know. They just don't pass the sniff test. So I guess for that reason, I'm probably pulling for the Eagles, but I don't know. I guess I really am going to have a hard time rooting for either team. I guess on paper, I'm going to go with the Eagles. Do I think they're going to win? I mean, just the Chiefs find a way. I mean, they're a football team that finds a way, and Mahomes is an elite player at finding ways to win games, and that you cannot deny. I mean, there are times where he does things where it isn't pretty, but it just gets the job done. So if I was betting money, I would go with the Chiefs. I guess my heart's going to pull for the Eagles, but it's going to be a tough game to watch, truthfully.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat with you. So I think a lot of people are too. So, hey, well, safe travels, man. We appreciate the time, and all the best to the fam. Enjoy some time off, and we'll catch up with you again soon, okay?
Absolutely. You take care.